Hey,
Hi.
we had originally intended to have our very, very cute baby be a part of this video, but then she started talking a lot, which is ironic because this whole video is about talking confidently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she's with the nanny now.
Yeah. Addie speaks with an accent.
Yes.
Well, Addie doesn't speak. That was just joking because I want to explore an area that I'm always feel insecure about when I speak English and I function as an English speaker um, in our family, in our group of friends, as a teacher when we travel. Yeah, and so that would be about my accent. So I realized that I speak English with an accent. This, despite this, well, it's not too bad. It's just that because all of my adult life, I majored in English. I went to school in Australia. I went to grad school in the Netherlands.
Yeah, you basically feel like you shouldn't have an accent anymore,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, but I do.
You're like, this should be gone by now. I should have gotten rid of this thing.
But I still find it difficult. Every time a new friend is introduced to me, a new, native speaker friend who was introduced to me, and then I found myself, shit, will I make this person understand me because I have a heavy accent? And that's my belief. And so I want to explore this with you. What do you think about my accent?
Well, your accent is awesome. I mean, it's one of the that plus that Cheshire Cat face you just made. Those are the two reasons I fell in love with you. No, I've never had any trouble understanding you. I think here's how I think about accents. So long as you're pronouncing the words more or less correctly, it's completely fine to have an accent that indicates where you came from. So I think of accents, or I think of language kind of like music. So think of a musical score. So you've got the notes, and you can look at them on a page, and everyone sees the same notes, in the same way that everyone sees the same words on a piece of paper. But of course, different people pronounce them differently, just like different musicians play those notes slightly differently. So, if I'm in America, we have different regional accents from all over the country. And somebody from the South is going to say a sentence a little bit differently than somebody from Long Island or from Colorado. But as long as they're more or less pronouncing the words correctly, I'm not going to have any trouble filtering and understanding. I think, oh, well, that person's from the South, and the pattern of their speech sounds more or less like this. So my brain sort of automatically translates, even when something sounds a little funny. And it's the same for your accent. I've got that, people in Vietnam tend to pronounce things this way. So I kind of filter automatically. Of course, if your pronunciation is very far from what your listeners used to, sure, it could become a problem. So if somebody pronounces a word in a way that just isn't recognizable, just isn't the way anyone says it, then it might take your listener a second to catch on. Right. I had that experience the first time I came to Vietnam, because Vietnamese is a tonal language, which means that actually it's more important to get your accent right in Vietnamese, because the difference in meaning between words depends on these really tiny five different words that she just said. And so when I came to Vietnam the first time, I was doing my best. I was completely sincere. Yeah. I was trying to say basic things like, where's the bathroom?
And then the lady in the street was like, huh? And then you were like, nhà vệ sinh ở đâu? And she was like, huh? And then, nhà vệ sinh ở đâu?
Right.
And then basically it's the same thing.
And in my mind, like, I believed I was so close, and I believed, like, she's just not trying, right? She's just trying to make fun of me because she must know what I mean. But in Vietnamese, it's not that way. It is actually much harder to make yourself understood.
Yeah.
Whereas in English, if you're within the ballpark and you're talking to a person who's reasonably kind and trying to communicate back with you, you're going to be fine, you know.
That is that when you, but you have to admit that you're exceptional at recognizing the tone, the different tone, different people inflection when they speak English. Inflection. See, so this is what I really treasure in our day-to-day communication. That is that when you see that I use a word wrongly, or how do I say, or I'm so close to the correct word choice, you give it to me, and that day to day I start to pick up a lot, and so.
Well, and it's partially because, you know, I think a lot of language learners, like I'd say I'm intermediate to advanced in Spanish. So when we're in Spain and I'm trying to communicate with a cab driver, when I say a sentence in Spanish, the only thing I hear is the word that I got wrong, or is the word that I mispronounced, or you can hear Addie in the background. She wants to talk too. The only thing I notice is the word that I got slightly wrong, right, or, you know, pronounced a little oddly. But the cab driver heard the whole sentence, right? He has all the context he needs to make sense of what I'm saying. So if I said, I want to go to, and I tried to say beach, but I said a word that just sounds like beach, he's going to be able to put it together. Oh, he's probably saying he wants to go to the beach. It's the same when you and I are communicating every day. I have a paragraph worth of context, and I know you very well.
Right.
So it's not hard to plug and play. But I want to address your other point, which is, you're right. You know, some people are better than others at having an ear for language, an ear for detail, or an ear for subtlety, or for making good guesses at what you're trying to say. Yeah. You know, we might as well just be really straightforward about it. My mom, for example, is a wonderful person. You know, very loving.
I love her.
We love her. She's just thumbs up all around for mom. But, you know, she'll be the first to tell you that she doesn't have a good ear for the sounds of language. So sometimes, you know, when you're talking to her, you're doing a pretty good job, I think, of communicating what you intend to communicate. But, you know, mom hears things a little differently than the way she's used to and struggles to follow.
Exactly. At first, when mom couldn't hear certain words that I say the same way that I say to you, but you get it right away. And I'm like, I start to again internalize, and it's like, oh, it's because of me again. But then mom is so good at saying, hey, it's only because of me. I don't have a good ear for language. And then we arrive to a place where I don't use my ego as a way to defend myself. Oh, is it my accent? Is it not my accent? But it's more about problem solving together.
Well, exactly, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
But you're exactly right. Like, it's a two-part equation, right? You're trying to communicate something, and she's trying to receive, and the communication takes place in between the two of you. So if it breaks down, right, it doesn't necessarily mean you're at fault.
No.
It doesn't necessarily mean she's at fault. It could just be that your wavelengths aren't quite aligned.
Right.
You know, and one of the reasons we find it so easy to communicate is because we're around each other all the time. So I know how you think. I know the kinds of things you're likely to say. Yeah. So I can kind of fill in the blanks, even if I didn't quite hear you fully.
Well, I want to pick and choose from what you just said. You say, well, there's an arrangement in problem solving between me and my mom. And to arrive to that place becomes an intimate act of a loving relationship. And I would like to do that with friends, your friends, that become my friends, but I haven't established that arrangement. Hey, work with me here. I might spend all day speaking English, but I'm still a Vietnamese speaking English. And so, so maybe it might require you of the friend a little extra effort to ask more questions, to decrease the gaps of communication with me. But to arrive at that place means we anchor a little bit deeper into our friendship.
Yeah, there's a great article by a guy named Mark Manson. I don't remember the title of the article, but essentially what he says is it's more rewarding to date somebody from another culture, especially, or rather, particularly somebody with whom you don't share a common language, or a native language. Because when you have to struggle to communicate, just a little, right? When you have to work for it, when you finally do communicate successfully, there's this extra big reward. It feels great to work for it and then succeed together. Actually, the guy that turned me on to that article is my buddy Dan. Dan's living in Barcelona right now, where we're moving in a couple months, and he doesn't speak Spanish fluently, but he's decided to learn formally now because of this experience that he had of feeling like he didn't have much Spanish, and he had people that he wanted to talk to, people who could be friends, but he felt like he had a couple tries, he got a couple chances in conversation to make himself understood. And because in the times when he couldn't do it, and he couldn't make himself understood, that he and this other person, they didn't share enough to make it worth it to continue. It wasn't like you or I, where we're married, we live together every day, so if I don't understand you, I'm going to work until I do.
Right.
But if you're just meeting somebody for the first time, if I'm talking to a cab driver or somebody I meet in a store or a new person in Barcelona, we don't have enough invested in each other. They don't necessarily care about me that much. Why should they? They're not necessarily going to spend all day trying to understand what I mean. Fair enough.
That's okay too.
Yeah, fair enough. That's just one of the things that happens. No, you're fine. That's one of the things that happens, when you're learning a language. One of my favorite scenes from The Sopranos is this scene where Carmela, Tony's wife, is talking about how she's got some Spanish, but when she and Tony went to Miami, she was so afraid to use it. Where Tony had his 6 words of Spanish, but he was out there saying "Hola, cómo estás" to everybody, and he's making friends. But he wasn't making friends with everybody. Probably a lot of those encounters ended fairly fast, and that's okay because he didn't have enough Spanish to establish real relationships or hold meaningful conversations about complicated topics. That comes in time, but when you're in the early stages of learning a language, yeah, you're going to go out, you're going to learn a little bit, you're going to try out what you know. What you know is going to grow by a little bit. Yeah. And day after day, eventually you're going to accrue enough that you can talk fluently and confidently.
Yeah, I think the key is to be able to, for me at least anyway, is to be able to just tell myself, to comfort myself and say, and to think, it's not just you. It takes two to tango. So and then but through immersing yourself in this language, picking up here and there and pay attention, and just build a number one, be proud, but also be open to how the different specific ways this language is different from my own language.
Yeah, and I think in some ways you've got an even bigger challenge because you've built your professional identity around being good at this language. You're a teacher, you're a curriculum specialist in a second language, in English.
Yeah.
So it's tempting to kind of be harsh with yourself when you make a mistake, I think. But it's funny because I sometimes see that with early language learners, like people who are just getting started. And the clearest example, it sticks with me so vividly, was when I learned French and German in high school, and a little bit of Spanish too. What I noticed is that a lot of my classmates were really hesitant to try to use the French or German or Spanish accent. So they would say the word, there were the phrases, "Cómo estás?" But they'd say it in a Lancaster County, Pennsylvania English accent. So they've got the words, but they're not really putting themselves into it.
Yeah.
And what they were trying to do is prevent themselves from looking foolish, right? you know, they were afraid that if they really said "Cómo estás," they would look silly to their classmates. You know how it is with teenagers; they're often afraid to kind of extend themselves or look silly in front of their classmates.
That doesn't limit to teenagers.
No, it doesn't. That's true. But I remember feeling like I was.
Hence this conversation.
Right. Sometimes it continues till you're 29 or 35. But I remember feeling like I was a nervous kid all the time in high school. But in this one area, I felt like, wow, what they're trying to do is prevent themselves from looking silly. But actually, they look sillier by not putting themselves into it. Like the word is
rigid.
Yeah, it's not "Cómo estás," it's "Cómo estás," right? There's an accent, there's a way you kind of have to be willing to sound a little silly before you ever have a chance of mastering the sound of a language that isn't your own, right?
Yeah.
Of course you're not going to get it right for the first time or for the first year, because you haven't been hearing these sounds your whole life. You haven't been using this language unconsciously in every conversation for your whole life. So, that building a language into your brain and building it into your life is something that most of us do without even thinking about it in our own native language over decades. So start learning a second language, you're doing all of that stuff, but you're doing it deliberately. And you're doing it when you're old enough to be embarrassed. So it's a tough process.
Yeah. But I think that key moment was key. That moment where you say, well, no, I'm going to appear silly so that I can get it right. I think it makes you the polyglot that you are today, who speak several languages and speak with a distinct tone of that language. It feels like when you speak Spanish, you're a Juan. When you speak, you are Roberto.
Roberto.
When you speak French, you are Jean-Pierre. And then when you speak German, you're a serious Van. Is it a common name?
I don't Van.
Van? No, Hans. Right?
Yeah, totally. Hans. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Addie develops. I mean, I hope, she's hearing every day. She's hearing Vietnamese, English, some Spanish. Our nanny speaks a little bit of, she speaks Karen, which is a Burmese language. So yeah, it'll be interesting when Addie starts forming words for the first time, whether we're going to get English stuff or a mix or who knows.
Yeah. That would unfold soon. Right. So I think to recap what we just said, I think my learning out of this conversation is to be able, for me, is to be able to establish or a working arrangement with my friends who I wish that we can communicate better. That it takes work. But bear with me, and I really want to talk to you. I want to share things with you, and to move this relationship to a deeper level. But this is just work with me.
Sure, and for you, but also for for anyone that's listening and is feeling I don't know, a little nervous or a little sheepish about your accent. Please try to remember that, for you hear your accent perhaps as a deficiency, as an imperfection, as something you're not doing right in the language you're trying to learn. But your listener might feel very differently about it. I mean, I fell in love with you in part because of how you sound, or, take your favorite movie star, Marion Cotillard, the French star. She's got a wonderful accent, a lovely accent. It's sexy, it's charming. And
totally.
She's not the only one. So, you might feel a little embarrassed by your accent, but others might think it's the best thing, since sliced bread. So
sexy.
So sexy.
Me? Sexy?
You.
You love my...
That's the Mekong Delta accent. I love you. You need to earn money.
We know.
We do. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.